Okay, let's get to the fun stuff. Well, not to say this isn't fun. This is definitely lots of fun. But this is going to be potentially finishing this concept. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is going to do some color balance. So let's get her colors to match kind of what we see in the concept. Make her flesh a little bit more blue. That's not too much blue. And we gotta get all this great subscattering surfacing stuff. Subsurface scattering. I was just thinking, like, I think I said that wrong. I'm saying it in my mind right now. Getting some colors to be a little bit more rich in certain areas. But for the most part, and I'm assuming that like this stuff is like from Frost. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to really go to town when I get a chance, once I get there, on this idea of Frost. So let's do this. And then okay. So, well, before we do that, let me do some more. Do some more painting on her face. It's just that her face is so far away that even if I go in here and really detail it out, like, it's kind of a waste of time. Just because, yeah, it's just so far away. Sorry, this is my focus with your mind mode. Yeah, because faces are tricky, but at the same time, they're a lot of fun, you know? Everybody likes to draw faces. I just try to avoid them till the very last moment. But I end up spending so much time on them. And that's a lot of the reason why I avoid them until the very last moment. I like to kind of imply maybe an expression or something like that in the very beginning, but I mean, if you really want to increase your workflow, don't paint the face until you have to, until like you're starting to refine your illustration. Just because, yeah, you'll see a lot of return in waiting. Yeah, that should be fine. I need more saturated blues from elsewhere in her face to kind of justify the ones towards her nose. All right. Okay. All right. Now, this is where I'm going to do the fancy stuff that I was talking about earlier. So I have this layer that's going to help me kind of define kind of her icicle fingers and whatnot. So I kind of want her to do something like this. And she's kind of got her thumbs intertwined. And she's got her hands. And this is, like, since I'm drawing hands, I have to be very, very particular about the shapes and the delicacy of hands. So that way when I start to smudge it together and all that great stuff, it starts to feel and look like hands. It's just time-saving type stuff. Oops. Yeah. And she's got really, really delicate looking hands too. So I need to keep that as much as possible. And hands for me are like just as important and as hard and as time consuming as the face, and like even just like the whole body. And so I spend a pretty significant amount of time to just get the hand shape right. And that's all you really need sometimes, is just the shape to be pretty accurate. You don't need to go in there and detail the hands. That's nice and all, but I'm not going to. Just for time's sake, because I'm not going to try to spend 2 or 3 hours on this thing, which would be kind of like a good amount of time that I would spend on any real thing is that I would do for work. I'd spend a good hour, 2 hours. Where this, I'm probably just going to go to the 45-minute mark and just call it a day. No matter where I'm at with this, just because you guys will get kind of the gist. Yeah. Yeah, see, I can spend all day just with knuckles and cartilage. Hands are fun. It's just takes time. So anyway, now that I'm getting kind of closer to what I think is going to be decent looking hands, and I can move on to other stuff like finishing this guy, this character completely. Yeah, that's looking cool. So then what I'm going to do here is kind of like I said, I was going to get some of this like fractal snowflake texture kind of going on here, because this is what's going to help separate this from a game concept to live action. Is just like crazy subtle detail that you can find that kind of helps sell the idea. Because in like a game, like movies, you can get, there'll be moments where you're like just literally up close and personal to certain things, so you would be able to see like all these little subtle hints of a concept. Like she's like really icy, so you would see a lot of that. Like anything that touches this, her flesh should be getting frosted. Zoom out. The tips of her shoulder pads are frosted over too. And I've been using kind of the round brush and the round chisel brush basically this whole time, but I'm going to start using more texture brushes in just a second once I decide kind of what I want to do. with the texture. But I want to get all the shapes and all that stuff in order before I start to yeah, so she's starting to come together. And then just do some of this. And now her actual dress gets kind of, and this is where I might start getting to the textures a little bit more, but right now I'm just going to draw it out because I'm running out of time. Like I said, I'm going to stop no matter what. So when I get to the 40-minute mark, I'm going to go nuts with finishing it and finalizing this drawing. But as for now, I'm just going to just detail it. Yeah. All right, so now what I'm going to do here is just more finalizing, more kind of finding opportunities for glass or icy shards, but more importantly, just making this chick look like the main fan art that I'm basing this off of. Okay, so like I said, I'm getting more conceptual with this ice stuff. I wanna like see how this is really loose still? It's because I know I'm gonna probably blur it or something crazy, like very film effect. And so I don't really need to, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about at all if it's not very refined. All I'm worried about is just kind of getting this thing to the point where I'm gonna go crazy with filters and stuff like that to make this thing look a little bit more finished. But the thing is that it's got to look already kind of finished before you start doing those filters. Like filters can only do so much to kind of add to a drawing. It only adds to something that's already kind of ready to be finished. And this trick is just about to be there. So yeah, looking at the concept, seeing stuff that I didn't realize before that I totally missed out on, I'm going to try and implement them in here subtly. That doesn't seem subtle at all, actually, but it's all good. And then mirror that over there. Yes. And then it's starting to get a little bit closer to where I want. So this is where I'm going to start using like texture brushes, and I'll basically glaze them on with kind of a low opacity, and this is just again to add to this hyper detail. But I need all the stuff that I kind of got started there first, because it doesn't do much to something that you don't have any kind of design aesthetic for it when you go into it. If you're just throwing textures on something that has no textures or no implication of textures, you might make a lot of mistakes. So if you don't have ideas of what your forms are at and what your texture is going to be, like if you don't have any inspiration for where any of that stuff's going to go, then yeah, you're going to be wasting tons and tons of, like, you're basically going to ruin your painting by throwing texture on it without any idea of what it's supposed to, like what the forms are and what all this stuff is. So it's very important that I usually wait till the last minute. And it's not to say that if you started painting with texture that it's going to be ruined all the time. I'm just saying if you don't have any ideas of where you're going with it, sometimes you can mess it up. I know, especially if you're a beginner, you should definitely heed this advice. But it doesn't mean that's true all the time. Like there's a lot of people who paint only with texture brushes, but they know what they're doing and they have tons of practice on what they're doing. And I even do that too. But I think about what I'm going to do and why I would need to start with texture brushes versus not starting with texture brushes. But yeah, you can start to see how this is starting to become a little bit more pro looking. Okay, and so I'm going to do a circular gradation here, and I'm going to throw tons of texture kind of just implied here, because like I said, I'm gonna do lots of blurring in a minute. Yes, blurring is my friend. It saves me tons of time. That, you know, for areas that I want to kind of be there, but I don't want to detail, because I can just say those are supposed to be icicles and people get it. But stuff like what's on her face and all that great stuff like that, like all this detail needs to be definitely not implied. It needs to be showcased. Okay. All right, so it's starting to look like it's done, and we're almost at the 40-minute mark. So what I'm going to do here is make one more kind of texture pass. All right. And then I am going to add a fractal. So I paused the video so I can like look for a fractal. I thought I could find it on my desktop, but I realized it's not there. But I usually just type in fractals, and there's all this like free kind of computer generated fractal stuff. I just take that stuff and I'll just throw it into my my design. And this is great because what you can do is you can start to if you put this on screen, you can start to kind of use it as great little whimsical, like floaty bits. And if you just use it right, you can really kind of make a really cool effect really fast. I'm probably going to use the same fractal for the lower torso area. But it's also important to be able to take that fractal and then add to it, so it's like a little bit more unique. But I see that she has a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Get some of this. Little floaty bits, always great. Then airbrush, apply a subtle glow. Now a lot of people, when they put the glows in, they're like, "Oh snap, glow in the dark," right? But what makes a good and more believable glow is it has to be very subtle. And if you do it subtly, then it's going to be more attractive and it's more believable. Okay, and then I'm gonna, since I had it already kind of saved in my clipboard, I can just press Control V again. It'll bring in the latest and greatest fractal that I just used, and this is where I'm going to just do something like this. And then just erase. It's kind of cool. It looks like cobwebs of ice, which is great. I got that for free, so I'm going to steal it. Alright. I'm going to make an overlay layer on top of all this stuff, because I think some of her features are starting to, I need to lighten up her face, so that stuff graphically pops out better. And then here's the last few stages. So what I usually do is I'll desaturate everything a little bit, because usually I go pretty saturated just because I want color. but real life it lives in more desaturated state than it does in a super saturated. That's like more game / cartoony. Right, that feels much more realistic, even though it's a very subtle shift of hue. Then I do the same thing with levels. I get rid of the blacks, and then I start to group my values a little bit better. Get rid of the pure whites. And then this is where I'll start doing some of the blur stuff. So let's do radial blur, because I'm gonna make it seem like she's like coming in. So I'll put it on the bottom, do like maybe 5, hit OK, let my machine slowly kill itself. Okay, great. Actually, you know what? It probably would have been better if I had it from the top. I was trying to make it seem like she was coming, but I realized like the part that's unblurred is the part that I did the less work on. So let's just do it from here. Yeah, this is better. And then I can just erase focal areas, like her hands, her face, and leave some things to stay blurred, like especially the bottom part, right? And it adds a nice effect. Then I'm going to go to do another merging of everything. Do noise, add noise. Got no time left. 2. And then last but not least, filter lens correction. Put this stuff on blast. It's chromatic aberration. Yeah. And then I might do a linear dodge layer and make an airbrush and go over just subtle stuff like her face, her chest, and all the icy bits, and give it even more of a subtle glow. To really bring this stuff to home. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. This thing is starting to look like a concept of perhaps that character Lissandra for film. And so this is pretty much how I approach fan art. Fan art's very important to do because what it does is, like I said earlier, it allows you to kind of test your abilities based off of someone else's concept and just kind of try to improve upon it as well as improve your own skills. So it's important to do it things that you like to do, because then otherwise it's just kind of boring, like tedious work that you're just kind of forcing yourself to do because you heard someone like me tell you to do fan art, and you're just like, oh, I gotta do it. You do the things you love, it's so much easier to kind of stick with it. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, about anything, whoops. Sorry, I'm going to frame this so I can... Yeah, I guess I can't do that. But if you have any questions, please email me at robotpencil@hotmail. I try to get back to as many people as possible. But you can always go to Tumblr for our latest and greatest things. And for those online videos I was talking about before, you can go check out gumroad.com/robotpencil. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. And you can leave comments as well. And let me know what you think and what you would want me to paint next, and I will make an attempt to do that, especially if I think it's cool. All right, thank you.